Hey there, Kat. How are you doing today?
Hi, Wesley. How are you?
I'm doing great. So I'm excited for us to get into this conversation. We're going to be talking about a whole lot's been happening in the world since we recorded our last podcast.
A whole lot. It seems it's a different place, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I have an opinion about this, but did all the things that are happening in the world, all the changes, of course, even AI, all those things have anything to do with what prompted you to write a new book?
Yes, and yes.
Let's tell everybody the title, right? So, this is Humanizing
Mhm.
IT, the experience distortion of IT service management. That's an interesting choice of words. The humanizing, I think everybody's heard us talk about that a bit, but this experience distortion, what is that?
I think since writing my first book, as you say, the world has changed significantly. And when we say the world, we mean the world of IT service management.
Yeah.
Other things have changed, obviously. But the book was 3, 4 years ago when I wrote it. And I've learned a lot more. And I think IT has progressed a lot since then, obviously. And it just seems to be experience is the new buzzword in IT. And I think there's a lot of confusion about what experience means in IT. I have very strong views on the role of experience in IT service management. And that was really the prompt for writing a new book based on this whole everything's about experience now. And of course, AI, of course.
Okay. So, when we talk about the term distortion, I'm pretty sure that word is not used anywhere in your original book, which was Human Centered Design for IT Service Management. Why bring the word distortion in now? Why feature it prominently? What does it mean? What's being distorted?
I think that we're confusing frameworks or models. And as you know, I've said too often, Wes, I don't believe that I'll go with framework for now. The
Okay.
framework called human centered design, because it is a framework, fits into the framework of IT service management. So, framework that we're all familiar with, such as ITIL, it's not a hand in glove relationship. They're there for different purposes. And I think when you effectively don't understand both disciplines or frameworks, that's when the distortion starts. And what we do through HIT Global,
Yeah.
our company, we do training that educates IT professionals to stop the distortion.
Okay. So, who is this book really for? And what do you hope it changes, not just in the industry, but in our profession? What is that ideal outcome?
So the book would be for, and I said this for the original book, it's from the service desk to product developers to the CIO and everybody in between. Everybody. And I often say this too, as we go to conferences, we're lucky to travel the world and speak at events, IT events, and we
Yeah.
talk about value and co creation. And very rarely, and I'll be brave, the last event I was at, there was not one person from the business at these events. It's IT people. And so I want the book to also be read by business people so they understand the complexities of IT service management.
Okay. Fair. I'm curious if I'm a business person and I'm picking up this book, where am I featured? Where do I see myself?
Mm.
It might have something to do with silent suffering. Say more about that.
Yes. So in our book and in our training, we teach human centered design tools and techniques. And one of those is called archetypes. And one of those archetypes is called a silent sufferer, which I'm sure most of us and our listeners know. There's people in the business and in IT that don't log tickets. They'll just put up with things. Another archetype we have is the workaround expert. Again, I'm sure that we're familiar with these type of archetypes. And that's what I loved about writing the book, because As I studied IT service management for many years and again, attained one of the highest certifications you could get. I never knew any of this stuff. I never knew what an archetype was, what a persona was, all these wonderful tools and techniques that help us design a better IT service management experience. And when you say who's involved, we need to get these archetypes into the design of our processes.
Okay.
And I think, sorry, I jump ahead. I think where we make a lot of mistakes in IT service management is, again, with this experience starts with a process step. So every time a user logs an incident or asks for an update or anything to do interaction with IT, we have created an experience. We've asked the user for decades, choose between a service request and an incident. That's an experience. We're asking them to fill out a form on the portal. That's an experience. We're sending them updates. That's an experience. And these archetypes, have we ever got them involved in the design of these process steps or anything interaction with IT?
Okay. You said a lot there. There's a
I
lot
did.
to unpack. Okay. So we're going to zoom out for a second and we're just going to make sure we bring everyone who's listening along with us. Rapid fire. How do we define an experience?
Good question. Got me stumped there. How would you define?
I mean, in layman's terms, it's fine.
In humanizing, IT, we would say an experience is any interaction, whether it's a digital interaction or a human interaction.
Okay, fair enough. So it's any interaction. And then with that, let's double click on the word archetype. You've used archetype and persona interchangeably a second ago. Let's just make sure we're bringing everyone with us. What is it?
What is it? An archetype, is patterns of behavior. So how do you behave in a situation?
So if I'm acting, maybe a metaphor for this is an archetype is a role. No.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Because, for example, we're used to the term VIP in service management. VIP is usually an executive, and we've spoken about this. You get
Sure.
preferential treatment, entitlement, we would call it in humanizing IT.
Okay.
But a VIPs can be different archetypes.
Okay.
So an archetype is not a role. It's how you behave in a situation.
Okay.
And you might change.
So archetype is a set of behaviors.
Yes.
Okay. Someone could occupy more than one archetype.
Absolutely. Depends on the situation.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned two. You mentioned the workaround and you also mentioned the silent sufferer.
Yeah.
I can personally attest I've been both.
Absolutely. You gave an example once, Wes, as a VIP, you wanted to change your password. And what archetype did you adopt? Do you remember?
Oh.
You rang someone directly.
Ultimately,
Yeah.
I was trying to silently suffer through getting through my own rightly designed process, but poorly delivered experience.
But you reacted.
And when I could no longer suffer silently, I picked up the phone and pulled the VIP card.
Yes, you did. Whereas another archetype we talk about in the book is a rule enforcer, a guardian that will always follow process.
Oh.
Yeah.
So for those of you who've been following us, I think this is where you use the word Chuck.
Chuck, yes.
Okay.
Very good. Yeah, Chuck is absolutely
All
that
about the
archetype.
rules.
Yeah.
You know the type, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, very much.
This is the guy who doesn't get invited to the parties, happy hours. You just leave this in on our side of the pond. We call this guy a buzzkill. A buzzkill. The party's over as soon as he arrives.
Yes. There's Chuck.
Yeah.
But the reason it's important in the early design work, again, I might go back a little bit, Wes, is that our framework, the Humanising IT Hit Double Diamond framework, we walk through steps to design something. We just don't do an archetype. We just don't do a persona.
Right.
And part of that is if you're designing it, again, I'll use a process we're all familiar with, the incident management process, you have to have these archetypes front of mind because, again, people that are by nature workaround experts will not log tickets. They just won't. And so you have to consider that. And then you also need to consider that when we're doing reporting, we've had X amount of incidents this month. That's not true. We know that.
Now, would it be fair to say that a persona can be expressed via multiple archetypes?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so in human-centered design for IT service management, we introduce personas and proto-personas, which for the uninitiated, think of a proto-persona as a persona light, okay? 0 calories, but all the flavor. But now we're moving into humanizing IT in your second installment here, where we're introducing, in addition to personas, the concept of archetypes and the need for the folks who are responsible for designing and delivering experiences to hold both of these concepts in mind as they're designing and delivering
Through the
experiences.
design process,
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do archetypes first, and then we move on to proto-personas. But I think what I'd also like to highlight is human-centered design, as was, is an amazing framework that people spend years studying.
Right.
So to create a persona, it creates skills. And also, it costs a lot of money to create a persona that companies we're familiar with, Microsoft, IBM, all the big companies, create personas for their customers.
Sure.
And they invest heavily in understanding customers. We say in the book that, and part of this distortion is we don't believe that IT departments need that skill. And it's also out of respect for the craft of human-centered design. I would be quite nervous if I hear, I hear, we've created personas. Personas can take months to do. And so in the book, we say that we can do light versions of it, and we acknowledge that. And customer journey mapping is another example.
Yeah.
Where, again, that can take months with fantastically skilled human-centered designers.
I'm going to trip you up.
Go on, trip me up.
So in humanizing IT, how do we think about customers? Are we actually thinking about CX in the traditional sense, or we're looking at the customer that's on the receiving end of consuming the services or the products that our company's delivering, or are we thinking of someone else?
And this always gets me into trouble, Wes.
I know. That's why I asked.
So in humanizing IT, the premise is that IT service management is not responsible for customer experience. And I always get objection, and I say, how can it possibly be when we have very little interaction with the customer? And at the end of the day, it was not designed for customers. It was designed for end users.
So on that last part, I agree. On the first part, I might take issue.
Take issue.
Right. So if I'm looking at, say, an academic institution, the customer persona there oftentimes are the learners, the students. In my experience, they are experiencing IT. They're interacting with the service desk quite directly.
Yes.
Whereas if I'm thinking about Macy's as a retailer, I go and I purchase a new watch at Macy's. My interaction with IT is little. It's almost as passive as not, or indirect. I'm consuming the technology, but really the person that's delivering the experience is the frontline staff. And confirm or complicate that.
Yes.
Am I thinking about this?
No, so we say there's always exceptions. So universities is an exception where we do deal directly with the customer,
right,
which would be the students, obviously. But that's one of the very few, because again, a department store, an airline, a hospital, he does not talk to nurses.
Generally.
Sorry, to patients, I beg your pardon.
Generally,
They would talk to the nurses, and the nurses talk to the patients. Again, an airline wouldn't speak to a passenger. Customers ring a contact center, typically, which then may end up in the IT organization. So that's the premise, is that this whole thing, experience, and again, as we say in the book, how can IT possibly be responsible for experience? Because in its truest form, experience is air conditioning. Experience is how crowded the room is, how the volume of the music. That's truly experience. My concern is if we say we're responsible for experience, we're overreaching and will not be successful. So we have to be very specific in saying that to stop the distortion.
That IT is not responsible for the experience.
Not entirely, no.
Not entirely.
Yeah.
Okay, that word is pretty important. So IT is partially responsible for the experience.
It is.
And to the extent to which IT is responsible for the experience, how are they doing?
Go and ask any user out there, and there's some.
You asked IT folks in your book, and you talked about it.
Yes.
What was the response?
Yes. So we've done a survey again of asking IT professionals, what do they think the business thinks of IT?
Yeah.
And it's always slow, complex. They don't understand us.
Yeah.
And I think that I always get quite passionate about that, because I think it's quite sad that we all go to work in IT and we want to do a good job, but the business isn't appreciating what we do. And as I often said, because it's complex. And look, I think, as we said at the very beginning of this podcast, the world has changed. Absolutely. And I think it's getting a lot better. And I think because we are talking about experience more, and I think collectively we've been the pioneers, our team at HIT Global, of being that awareness of experience. But we've got to be careful. We've got to be really careful. And that's why I say the distortion, because I often say you can't tell people to be more human-centered or more customer-focused, especially IT people. We didn't join IT for experience. We joined IT for very different reasons amongst us. And so in a very measured and guarded way, we have to define what experience means in IT service management and then do the education and training.
Fair enough. I think, obviously, the book delves into this very important issue that's in front of all of us. And when I think about it, one of the things that keeps me up at night as a CIO, as a technologist, is the incredible advancement of AI. So when we're thinking about the juxtaposition of AI and experience in ITSM, where do we land? What is your guidance right now?
Fortunately, we have a lot of opportunities to see what's happening in the world of AI and tooling, I'll say, IT service management. Yeah. I think that there is such a huge opportunity untapped within that space. And really to make it an exceptional experience is ongoing. I think, AI at the moment, for the most part, it's categorizing knowledge, which is fantastic. How you log tickets is a whole different world. That's all AI. But I think to make it really human-centered, that it knows that you're Wes, it knows that you're very tech-savvy, it knows a lot about you, I think that's a really great opportunity here.
And also a little creepy, as ChatGPT sometimes is unnerving. Claude is at times too, but
you're right.
It
Absolutely.
is what it is. I think I told you I overshared. Can I roll that back, go into that memory, delete that? But nevertheless, there's a lot of promise as well as pearl with AI. So let's land the plane. At the end of the day, you wrote this book. I think it's probably important to clearly tackle again, why is the experience distorted, and why is it that folks who've read your first book should be picking up this book?
I think I'll be personal here, that I have learned so much from writing that book. And since then, we've created the Double Diamond Framework, the HIT Global, that actually gives IT professionals something they can hold in their hands and actually design. And this is probably another podcast, a positive experience, because I hear this a lot, and it wasn't that long ago, actually. I saw a strategy and it started off, we have to deliver an exceptional experience. And I said to the CIO, do you have an exceptional budget? And the answer was no.
Spicy, spicy. Okay.
Yeah. I said to him, either got to be very brave or very stupid asking you this question, because don't promise.
Did you get the business?
I'll let you know.
All right.
I will let you know. But it is true. A thing that we borrow from human-centered design, and I'll be very transparent here, we're using a lot of human-centered design techniques. It's not something we've created, but we've adopted them for the complexity and constraints of IT service management. So we say we want to create a positive experience.
Yeah.
But again, if you have a lot of money, create an exceptional experience. But if you don't, be careful, because this is where distortion will also occur.
Fantastic. Listen, it's been an honor and it's been great having this conversation. I know as a CIO, I've taken my teams through classic human-centered designs, aka design thinking training, and they get excited during the training, and then they turn around and say, how do I apply this? And I never had a great answer, because they didn't have time for a ton of prototyping. They didn't have time for doing all the cool things. And they were using a lot of off-the-shelf technologies, right? So it wasn't a lot of opportunities for whiteboarding and creativity in the classic sense. So I struggled to really bridge those two worlds until I read Human-Centered Design for IT Service Management, joined Hit Global, and went on this journey with you and Mark. So I'm really excited about the second installment. I think it's a must-have. And I think it's been a great conversation today.
It's been a great conversation. Conversational, educational, and fun. So
absolutely.
Thank you. Till next time. Thank you.
Till next time.